join the general welcome for the government actions reported in this statement and pick up a point made by the Noble Lady Baroness Northover about the rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia, which is reportedly mediated by China and is reflected in the meeting yesterday of the oil ministers on the sidelines of the OPEC conference in Vienna. Can the Noble Lord the Minister tell me if the government is reconsidering UK arms sales to Saudi Arabia in the light of these relationships, given that arms sales totalled an official declaration £7.9 billion since the bombing of Yemen started in March 2015, and the campaign against the arms trade estimates £23 billion. And in that context, the actions of the Iranian state that have provoked this reaction by the British government, what impact does the Noble Lord the Minister see on the war in Yemen and the terrible humanitarian conditions in Yemen, given it's one of the world's worst humanitarian crises? And it is also, of course, an enormous environmental threat in the light of the sadly misnamed tanker, the Safer, off Sana'a. And I don't know if the Noble Lord the Minister, either now or in writing, is able to update me, because the last information I've been able to find was talk of a UN mission to pump the 1.1 billion barrels of oil in the Sana'a, in the Safer, out of it. At the end of May, it was reported this was about to start, but there's been no report since then. So the behaviour of the Iranian regime, and indeed the behaviour of the Saudis, and how does that likely to impact on attempts to defuse this environmental time bomb?
My Lord, yes, I acknowledge, and the Noble Lady Baroness Northover asked me about the Saudis and the new sort of deal which was signed between the Saudis and Iran. I was in Saudi Arabia recently in Riyadh, and I also met with some of the key people involved with the direct negotiations with the Houthis. What I can share with the Noble Lady is, since that deal has been signed, as I asked the Saudi minister who visited on Monday directly, a month on, and he did smile and said, we'll wait and see on how stabilisation works in the region. But thankfully, what we have seen through some of the work done directly by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is a fragile peace which has been sustained in Yemen. I've had extensive meetings with various representatives of the Yemenese government, including the Prime Minister this week. We've also met with various leaders, including the Foreign Minister. When I was in Saudi Arabia, I met with the Saudi Arabian Ambassador, Mohammed bin Jabbar, who's leading the direct engagement with the Houthis and indeed other parties within Yemen. The situation, whilst the Noble Lady is correct and we stand by our strong-standing humanitarian support for Yemen, is improving, and we're certainly playing our part both directly and through the UN to ensure the UN-mandated process is further strengthened. But the Saudis in this respect, and whilst I hear what the Noble Lady says about support for their arms industry and indeed our defence sales, those you will know are done under a very rigorous programme and practice, but nevertheless what we have seen, and I think it's important also to recognise where there is progress, that in what is a very challenging situation of fragility across the Middle East, in Yemen, primarily led by some of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's efforts, we are seeing progress on the ground, accessibility and indeed reconstruction taking place. If I may just pick up on the point that the Noble Lady Baroness Northover also raised about the US and the interventions that are made. Our military, of course, works very closely. Earlier this year, regrettably and tragically, we again saw the shipment of arms from Iran towards and through the Gulf towards the supply of the Houthi machine, but we were able to intercept, and we've been sharing some of that information in the interceptions that we've made with key Gulf partners to make the case for the importance of ensuring that we can stop this particular arms flow from Iran. On the issue of FSO Safer, she said, it's an Arabic word, so the Safer, I think, is, but yes, it translates very much in an anglicised way. We want to make Safer safer, and in that regard, the first step was very much about money, and that money has now been gathered, and the UN, along with British expertise and that of other nations, is working on ensuring the environmental catastrophe that would happen if that tanker's load was to shed across the Gulf is being directly dealt with. There is a lot of work being done, but in stabilising both the vessel before any operations can begin. But whilst I'm not going to tempt fate and say it's very good news, there has been some real progress, and the first thing is about ensuring the financing was in place, which I can assure the Noble Lady is now very much in place in situ.